Good morning, and welcome to Opinions from Mary. I'm going to read chapter 2 of Face of God. It gives me encouragement, and I hope you enjoy it as well. Okay, here we go. And we are live, and I have puppies. So here we are. Chapter 2 is titled Church Spirituality on the Sabbath. Realizing God's presence in church was difficult for me. Human frailties shielded the goodness I wanted to see. Instead, nature provided evidence of God's mercy and love. Now I understand that God is everywhere, on earth as well as above. That's the preface. Okay, do you have to die to meet God? Many religions profess that is the case. However, what about the claims that God knows all, God is everywhere, and God is present when two or more are gathered? Today, our world population is the largest it has ever been, and it continues to grow. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. That's Matthew 18:20, King James Version. When the clock struck midnight and we moved from 2013 into 2014, the United States population reached a new record of more than 317 million people, according to the U.S. Census Bureau estimates. That keeps the United States at the third most populous country on the planet, behind only China, 1.35 billion, and India, 1.23 billion. Overall, the world population will top 7.1 billion at the start of 2014. That's according to Robert Schleisinger in the 2014 U.S. and World Populations U.S. News World Report. So, with over 7 billion inhabitants on planet Earth, more than two are always gathered. God knows that, especially if He knows everything, and He is present everywhere. Unfortunately, for many, their spiritual practices are held typically on Sundays or not at all. The two most popular days for increased church attendance are Easter and Christmas. Those two religiously honored days boast the highest gathering ratios for all denominations. Whether or not one regularly or religiously attends designated church gatherings, the presence of God remains everywhere. It is we who fail to acknowledge His presence. We sometimes act as if the presence of God behaves the same way as a water valve. We turn it off when not needed and increase the water pressure and flow when we desire more. We may experience God in church. Observance of sacred beliefs among other like minded individuals provides an excellent feeling of camaraderie. Church participation is a wonderful opportunity to share similar beliefs and attitudes. However, I believe that man, not God, has conjectured and propagated the development of a need for church participation. Usually, the teachings of goodness and the benefits of God's love, biblical commandments, and other lovely and spiritually inclined beliefs are obtained through church participation. Our materialistic, legally usurped, and power driven society seems to do little to improve the spiritual aspects of one's life compared to the religious teachings of many denominations. Therefore, if you have found a church, teachings, and beliefs that improve and benefit you, that is a wonderful opportunity. Congratulations for your ability to experience the blessings and benefits of your declared religion. Unfortunately for many, including me, church participation fell short. Whether some individuals require advanced study, have become bored, or do not accept many of the religious teachings offered by various denominations, the reasons are not important. The aphorism, "there are no atheists in a foxhole," suggests that deep down we all have a relationship with God, whether we are aware of it or not. Why are there so many searches for God when He is right here? God shows His face continuously. We just need to know where to look, or rather, we need to know how not to look away. I attended a parochial school for my formative years, from kindergarten to late 1963 through 8th grade and early 1972. Back then, nuns were the teachers, and lay instructors were not included in the educational experience until the 5th grade, where only our math instructor was not a resident of the convent above the classrooms. In essence, the nuns were the major disciplinarians and were responsible for my upbringing. The community where I lived was a stable one, with no one seeming to leave or enter. The same students I grew to know in kindergarten continued as my classmates throughout the 8th grade. The nuns that taught prior grade students would prepare nuns teaching subsequent grades for all the students they were soon to instruct. Overall, it was a rather well organized operation. Everyone knew each other and knew what to expect. In the 2nd grade, church was a daily ritual. Girls were required to wear hair coverings during Mass. Failure to provide one resulted in the dreaded Kleenex tissue to be bobby pinned to the top of one's head. A woman's uncovered head was considered some sort of sinful thing during church services. Attending daily Mass was a boring and potentially humiliating ritual. The ritualistic sermons were in Latin. Neither I nor anyone I knew could understand what was said. These issues aside, I did enjoy parochial school. It provided stability. I was encouraged to pursue activities that were beneficial and wholesome to my maturity and growth. I proved to be a good kid. I had close friends and was respected and valued by the convent nuns. Life was relatively simple. After I entered high school, that wholesome, simple, mystic melody of everyday events changed. It was public high school. In the hallways, I saw a few girls who were obviously pregnant. They were so pregnant that their tummies extruded out further than the width of their bodies. They were due to give birth any day. What a shock. The nuns who raised me did not deal with anything of that sort. All my classmates remained chaste up through the 8th grade graduation. If they were not, they dare not talk about it. Public high school students were not anything like my parochial grade school classmates. Without the stabilizing force provided by nuns, discord at home surfaced to the point that I felt I needed to leave home, and I decided to survive on the streets. I did not make it through the 2nd semester of my high school sophomore year. I felt forced to drop out. I valued my education, but having to find residence where possible took me to Chicago, and I was unable to provide residency and required enrollment criteria to continue high school in the Northwest Indiana. Living on the streets took me far from the wholesome experience I had in my youth. I grew up fast. Strangely, however, I was so naive, virginal, and trusting that many of my acquaintances seemed to adopt and protect me as best they could. Finding God in church was not available for me. I did enjoy a commonality experience with some of the congregation members. However, I also experienced the opposite of Christianity from others. Sadly, some of the most dedicated and revered religious members were the ones I found to be selfish, uptight, condescending, and greedy for material wealth at the expense of others. Those individuals, considered by some to be the pillars of the religious congregation, made it difficult for me to continue with my church membership because of the disgust they invoked in me. As the majority of Christian religions, much of my spiritual upbringing and church doctrine focused on Jesus Christ. I truly respect Jesus Christ for the compassion and forgiveness the church preaches about Jesus' character. Yes, he was definitely godlike, to be able to turn the other cheek when human frailty superseded love and compassion in favor of greed and power. Jesus Christ's elevated and perfect compassion and love are godlike qualities that very few earth beings have reached. I too am excluded from fully possessing such a divine trait. I could only react as if some congregation members were the money changers in the temple, and my method of overturning their tables was just to leave their presence and distance myself from them. Attending church seemed to limit me and my ability to grow closer to God. It allowed me to grow closer to a group that spoke in honor of God. Church services distanced my personal relationship in lieu of group contribution. When my father died in 1992, I was 34 years old and had been working as an environmental engineer. By that time, I had investigated many other religions. The majority of them were the popular Christian sects. I even investigated a few non Christian religions that were unique in some beliefs and had some followings. I believed that if all religions contained a piece of the truth, investigating many denominations might provide all pieces for total truth. That was not the case. If anything, I felt I had experienced the meaning of Matthew 7:15 to 16, the New American Standard Bible. Be aware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. I even considered atheism. None of the denominations offer the fullness of answers to spiritual topics that I studied. Atheism, as my non religious approach, came closest to providing acceptable explanations. My scientific and engineering education proved useful in providing plausible explanations to many inquiries I had. It was just easier to find a scientific basis than a spiritual response, which no one religion seemed to have. I bring up my father's death because as he lay in the casket during his wake, I was devastated. A priest from the parish of my parochial school approached to comfort me. "Where is he now?" I asked in tears. The priest's response confounded me. "That is what our faith and teachings are about, rising above death." I was shocked. Yes, as a child, I did hear that rhetoric. I felt partly comforted. However, I needed to know more. Omitted details were now in question. I had to know every particular. Where was Dad? I needed to find out. External searching provided other opinions. No one seemed to have definite answers. Neither religion nor science provided the thoroughness of information I needed. Science came close, whereas religions I investigated did not. However, nature did. It provided the link between spiritual understanding and scientific reasoning that made sense to me. Thus, it is nature where I was able to better experience the goodness of God. Nature is beautiful. God's creation is overwhelming and divine. Even the dangerous animals I have personally experienced in nature, such as spiders, snakes, barracudas, and other beasts, have not posed any threat. Rather, by studying the acts and beauty of nature, I have seen many of the good works described in the Holy Bible. Strange that nature, for me, is the best example of God's goodness given freely and lovingly, whereas people in church rituals provide the worst demonstrations. Possibly at that point, I had not found the right religion for me. I continued to search for religious doctrine that merited my acceptance of their truths, but nature was the most honest. Nature is not limited to forests, woods, countryside, oceans, or anywhere beyond one's backyard. From my home, I have seen beautiful, compassionate, loving, and generous acts. For instance, in the desert environment of Las Vegas, the home behind my backyard contained two large leafy trees, each about 25 feet tall. Those neighbors abandoned their home, and as years passed, the trees stopped being watered. The trees began to die. Amazingly, one tree sacrificed itself so the other tree could survive. There just was not enough water to save both. So one, in essence, committed suicide for the other's benefit. I thought I was mistakenly seeing what I just described, but it did happen just as willingly as I have mentioned. A documentary I remember viewing after the neighbor's tree had died revealed that one tree will sacrifice itself when a bug infestation occurs in the woods where the study occurred. One tree sent a chemical signal to the other trees, prompting them to emit other chemicals that repel the bugs and prevents them from attacking. Bugs would not pursue the trees that emitted the second chemical. The first tree continued to sacrifice itself and allowed the bugs to destroy it in order for the other trees to survive and thrive. Is that what Jesus meant when he said, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends"? That's John 15:13, the King James Bible. Hormonal sentience, first described by Robert A. Freitas Jr., describes the information processing between plants. Plants communicate for each other. For example, acacia trees produce tannin to defend themselves when animals graze on them. Other acacia trees acknowledge the airborne scent of the tannin, which then start to produce tannin themselves as a protection from nearby animals. There are even examples of a communication with animals. When attacked by caterpillars, some plants can release chemical signals to attract parasitic wasps that attack the caterpillars. A similar phenomenon exists not only between plants and animals, but also between fungus and animals. There exists some sort of communication between a fungus garden and workers of the leaf-cutting ant, Atta sexton ribopillosa. If the garden has plants that are poisonous for the fungus, it signals this to the ants, which then will avoid fertilizing the fungus gardens with any more of the poisonous plant. Besides nature, social media has become an integral part of society. Information is readily available on any subject an individual may desire. I am amazed at the number of people that hold the same views and opinion that I do. Much of humanity is progressing and evolving in their thoughts and beliefs. That is also part of my purpose for exposing my experiences and revelations within these writings. Others, including you, are asking the same questions that I have investigated and subsequently been given many answers to. One very popular television minister boasts the largest congregation and highest TV audience. He provides positive explanations for the masses that follow him. With his TV audience, a simple click of a button can shut him off and turn him off. Shut him up and turn him off. Even so, many follow his weekly teachings with delight and anticipation. His sermons, books, and teachings are uplifting and powerful. His discourses have provided true and beneficial. One comment he made, "Your words today will describe your future," is especially significant. I am just like everyone else, able to complain about obstacles and imperfections alike. Granted, the purpose of this complaining was to gain acceptance and approval from my audience at the time. Misery loves company is better stated as company can always strike up a conversation about problems at hand. People always seem to have something to complain about. Nevertheless, after I heard his comment regarding words today describing one's future, I started paying particular attention to what I was saying, and I realized that after a few years, my life had become exactly what I had been expressing with my words. I changed my words to be more positive, inspiration, and beneficial in my answer to, "How are you?" Within months, positive change is rooted. Within years, my life was far superior to the descriptions I had expressed previously. The principle of monitoring one's own words will immediately take root and prove true. We are all persuaded and conditioned into believing perceptions forced on each of us. Remaining positive can become a difficult task, so much so that it supposedly takes nearly 6 positive statements just to balance and undo one negative. That's Jack Zenger and Joseph Falkman, the idea praise to criticism ratio. HBR Blog Network, Harvard Business Review. Yes, believe that words are things. We do create our reality. Just as the book Wishcraft by Barbara Sher, now 30 years in print, had explained in the readings I did decades ago. Many books are available that formulate the same conclusion. Fortunately, today, social media and the internet allow everyone immediate benefit from the knowledge and experience of others. The spiritual principles that were previously unavailable for clarification are now acceptable, understandable, and easily received by those seeking answers. God loves and cares for all his children. He has bestowed upon each of us his royal grace and wisdom. We have the skills needed for our success. It is the way of this world and the forced conditioning that brings us distress. But if God is all knowing and exists everywhere, how is it possible that too often human beings cannot physically feel God's presence? Is that concept just a fantasy? We are in constant communication with God. He knows all. Our minds and thoughts link directly to higher powers. Science has revealed that man has a conscious, subconscious, and superconscious brain. Each is interlinked. The superconscious directly connects to our Creator. There is more to our minds and realities than our consciousness perceive in this three-dimensional earthly plane. 2,000 years ago, the Apostle Peter explained that God had revealed to him Peter's perceptions is present in Acts 10:34 to 35. Opening his mouth, Peter said, "I most certainly understand now that God is not one to show partiality, but in every nation the man who fears him and does what is right is welcome to him." Whether you receive your spiritual fulfillment through church attendance and activities, nature, television broadcasts, internet resources, books, or some other place, God is always present to assist you in discerning truth. It is time to unveil some of the answers you seek. Certain fragments of my personal experiences provide revelation. And that is it. Chapter 3 will talk about what I remember about my pre-existence, and it is a glimpse of life prior to my birth. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. Have a wonderful and blessed day, and do indeed know our Creator personally. Great. Have a great day. Bye.